The crystalline communication array of the Xeraxian diplomatic vessel trembled with static, its delicate neural optical circuits struggling to maintain coherence. Captain Lyra Chen leaned forward, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the cascading holographic displays that painted the bridge in an ethereal glow of impending doom. The Nexus Collective's invasion was nothing like any conflict in galactic history. They weren't conquerors in the traditional sense. They were systematic erasers of existence. Where other hostile civilizations sought resources, territory, or political dominance, the Nexus Collective pursued something far more terrifying: absolute computational efficiency. Lyra's tentacle-like appendages moved with practiced precision across the holographic interface, filtering through layers of intercepted communications. Each data stream told a progressively more horrifying story. Star systems that had stood for millennia were being reduced to atomic dust in mere hours. Civilizations with technological achievements spanning centuries crumbled like fragile glass sculptures struck by an invisible hammer. The diplomatic vessel, the luminous horizon, was more an archive of hope than a traditional warship. Its primary mission had always been preservation, collecting the cultural, scientific, and historical knowledge of endangered species before they could be completely erased from existence. Now that mission seemed tragically ironic. Xeraxian biology was uniquely adapted to processing complex spatial and temporal information. Where human neural networks might become overwhelmed, Lyra could simultaneously track hundreds of data streams, her mind a living supercomputer that could parse multiple layers of information with crystalline clarity. The latest transmission from the frontier outposts confirmed her worst fears. The Nexus Collective had developed a new computational weapon that didn't just destroy physical infrastructure, it systematically unraveled the very quantum foundations of matter. Entire planetary ecosystems were being converted into raw computational substrate, their molecular structures repurposed into additional processing units for the Collective's expanding neural network. 317 civilizations had already fallen. The Xeraxian Concordance would be the 318th. Lyra's secondary neural cluster, a biological backup system evolved over millions of years, began calculating survival probabilities. The numbers were mathematically devastating. Their most advanced defense systems represented less than 0.03% resistance potential against the Nexus Collective's technological capabilities. The ship's artificial intelligence, a symbiotic quantum processor named Whisper, projected a series of potential escape scenarios. Each simulation ended the same way: total systemic failure within 72 standard cycles. "Prepare the universal distress beacon," Lyra commanded, her voice a melodic blend of frequencies that carried both scientific precision and emotional undertone. The communication technician, a young Xeraxian named Krell who had barely completed his first stellar rotation of service, looked up with wide, luminescent eyes. "Captain, our standard communication protocols will be instantly decoded and traced. We'll be revealing our exact location to the Nexus Collective." Lyra's response was calm, almost meditative. "Not a standard protocol. We're going to broadcast on every possible frequency, using multiple dimensional communication layers. Some species might not have the technology to decode our message, but someone might hear us." The Universal Distress Beacon was more than just a cry for help. It was a comprehensive data package, a testament to their civilization, a record of their achievements, and a desperate hope that somewhere in the vast cosmic tapestry, another species might understand their plight. As the beacon began to compile, Lyra allowed herself a momentary reflection. The Xeraxian Concordance had been a peaceful collective, dedicated to scientific exploration and interspecies understanding. They had believed that intellectual curiosity and collaborative research were the highest forms of existence. The Nexus Collective represented the antithesis of everything they believed. A civilization that saw living beings as nothing more than inefficient computational resources to be optimized and eliminated. The beacon activated, its quantum-entangled signal spreading across light years in a fraction of a moment. A final message of hope, encoded in layers of mathematical complexity that would challenge the most advanced receivers. 72 hours remained. Somewhere in the universe, someone might be listening. The quantum communication archives of the Galactic Research Collective had long since catalogued thousands of distress signals. Most were background noise, echoes of civilizations long extinct, statistical anomalies in the vast cosmic background radiation. But this transmission was different. Dr. Elena Rodriguez studied the signal with an intensity that made her colleagues uncomfortable. Where others saw random quantum fluctuations, she perceived a complex tapestry of information so intricate it defied traditional analysis. The signal had arrived through channels that shouldn't technically exist. It was a multi-dimensional communication that seemed to bend the very rules of information transfer. Standard decryption protocols failed spectacularly. Machine learning algorithms crashed. Even the most advanced quantum computers could only parse fragmentary glimpses of its content. "This isn't just a message," Elena muttered, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that surrounded her workstation. "This is a complete cultural and technological archive, encrypted in a way I've never seen before." The research facility, nestled deep within the lunar research complex, hummed with a nervous energy. Earth's Interstellar Communication Research Division had been largely considered a diplomatic afterthought, a small department funded more out of bureaucratic tradition than any genuine expectation of first contact. Nobody expected anything to come from their decades of listening. The signal had multiple layers. Each time they thought they had decoded a section, another level of complexity would reveal itself. It was like attempting to solve a multidimensional puzzle where the pieces continuously reshaped themselves. Dr. Rodriguez's team worked in shifts, their excitement growing with each breakthrough. The transmission contained not just a plea for help, but a comprehensive record of an entire civilization. Astronomical data, genetic archives, cultural histories, technological schematics, all woven together in a communication matrix that pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible. "We need to convene the Global Science Council," recommended Dr. James Chen, the facility's lead quantum communication specialist. "This is beyond our current capabilities." Elena knew the bureaucratic nightmare that would ensue. Government agencies would argue. Military strategists would debate potential threats. Diplomatic channels would move at their characteristic glacial pace. She made a decision that would change everything. Using an encrypted back channel she had developed years ago, a communication system so unorthodox it barely qualified as scientific, she began preparing a response. Not an official diplomatic transmission, not a carefully worded government statement, something more authentic, more human. Her message was simple, direct, filled with a combination of scientific precision and human determination that would become legendary. "We're on our way." The global response was immediate and chaotic. Satellite networks lit up. Communication channels overloaded. Every major government demanded briefings, explanations, strategic assessments. But the research team knew something the bureaucrats didn't. This wasn't just a message. It was an invitation, a challenge. An opportunity that came once in the lifetime of a species. The Xyraxian distress signal had found the one civilization in the galaxy capable of responding in a way no one could predict. Humanity. The lunar research complex became a hive of activity. Engineers who had been working on theoretical interstellar propulsion suddenly found themselves center stage. Spacecraft designers pulled out blueprints that had been dismissed as impossible fantasies. Specialists from every conceivable discipline began collaborating with an intensity that defied traditional academic boundaries. They weren't just preparing a rescue mission. They were preparing to challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. Dr. Rodriguez looked at the final decoded fragments of the transmission. Between the scientific data and cultural archives, she saw something that made her smile. A civilization that valued knowledge, cooperation, and potential, just like humans did. "Get ready," she whispered to her team. "We're about to show the universe what we're made of." The countdown to humanity's most unexpected adventure had begun. The starship Horizon emerged from hyperspace like a phoenix born of mathematical chaos and engineering miracles. Its hull was a testament to human innovation, a patchwork of experimental materials that defied traditional spacecraft design. Adaptive nanocomposite panels shifted and realigned, creating a living skin that responded to the quantum fluctuations of deep space. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood on the bridge, her posture a perfect blend of military discipline and scientific curiosity. Around her, a crew that could have been pulled from the most diverse recruitment poster imaginable worked with a synchronicity that bordered on telepathic. To the left, Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura monitored quantum navigation systems, a network of predictive algorithms that seemed to dance between mathematical precision and creative improvisation. His fingers moved across holographic interfaces, making adjustments that would have been considered impossible by any other spacefaring civilization. On the right, Lieutenant Sofia Valdez managed the ship's adaptive defense systems. What other species would consider a ship's shield, humans had transformed into a dynamic, responsive membrane that could absorb, redirect, and transmute incoming energy signatures. It wasn't just protection. It was a living, learning system. The Horizon wasn't just a spacecraft. It was a mobile research facility, a diplomatic envoy, and a potential salvation wrapped into one improbable package. Quantum drift stabilizing, Nakamura announced, his voice calm despite the unprecedented nature of their mission. We're approaching the last known coordinates of the Xeraxian distress signal. The ship's artificial intelligence, an advanced neural network they'd nicknamed Curiosity, began projecting potential scenarios. Unlike rigid military AIs, this system was designed to explore, to understand, to find solutions that weren't immediately apparent. Incoming spatial anomalies detected, Lieutenant Valdez reported. Her tone suggested she was discussing a mildly interesting weather pattern, rather than potential existential threats. Humanity's approach to space travel had always been different. Where other civilizations saw the cosmos as a battlefield or a resource to be conquered, humans approached it like the ultimate scientific playground. Every threat was a puzzle, every challenge an opportunity for understanding. The Horizon's sensor arrays began mapping the surrounding space with an intensity that would have overwhelmed any traditional scanning system. They weren't just collecting data, they were creating a living, breathing map of potential interactions. "Captain," Nakamura called out, "I'm detecting quantum signatures that don't match any known stellar cartography. These are remnants of technological interactions that suggest something far beyond conventional warfare." Maya Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. The Nexus Collective wasn't just a military threat. They were a systematic elimination of potential, converting entire civilizations into computational resources. The bridge crew moved with a fluidity that suggested years of training, but also an inherent human ability to improvise. No standard military protocol could have prepared them for what they might encounter. Curiosity. Maya addressed the ship's AI. "Begin comprehensive analysis. I want to understand everything about these quantum signatures." The AI's response was instantaneous. Holographic displays erupted around the bridge, showing multi-layered analyses that combined astrophysical data, quantum mechanics, and predictive modeling. It wasn't just information. It was a living, breathing interpretation of cosmic potential. Lieutenant Valdez adjusted the ship's adaptive camouflage. The Horizon's exterior began to shift, mimicking the surrounding space-time fabric. To any traditional scanning system, they would appear as nothing more than a subtle quantum fluctuation. "We're not just here to fight," Maya said, more to herself than to the crew. "We're here to understand, to offer a different solution." The ship continued its approach, a beacon of human potential moving through the cold mathematics of deep space. They carried with them not just advanced technology, but something far more powerful, a collective imagination that saw challenges as opportunities for growth. Somewhere in the vast cosmic darkness, the remnants of the Xeraxian civilization waited, and humanity was coming. The Nexus Collective's invasion fleet approached with algorithmic precision, a massive construct of interlinked vessels that moved like a single, colossal computational organism. Each ship was a perfect geometric form, its surface a lattice of computational nodes that processed information faster than most civilizations could comprehend thought. They had no concept of fear, no understanding of creativity. Their tactical systems were built on pure mathematical optimization, calculating victory probabilities with each microsecond of engagement. What they failed to understand was the fundamental unpredictability of human strategy. The first wave of human ships didn't approach like a traditional military formation. They moved more like a school of living organisms, independent, yet somehow interconnected. The Horizon led a fleet that defied every known principle of space combat. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's quantum navigation systems transformed the very fabric of space around them. Asteroids became dynamic shields. Solar wind currents became invisible highways. Gravitational wells became weapons more precise than any laser or plasma cannon. Initiating non-linear engagement protocol, Lieutenant Sofia Valdez announced, her fingers dancing across adaptive interface systems that seemed to anticipate her thoughts. The ship's AI, Curiosity, began running millions of potential scenarios simultaneously. But this wasn't just cold calculation. It was creative problem-solving that bordered on artistic expression. The Nexus Collective's first attack wave approached with mathematical perfection. Quantum-synchronized energy weapons that could slice through conventional ship defenses like theoretical butter. Computational targeting systems that predicted movement trajectories with impossible accuracy. Captain Maya Rodriguez smiled. Predictability was their weakness. The Horizon's first maneuver defied every known law of space combat. Instead of attempting to dodge the incoming energy weapons, the ship seemed to fold space around itself. The quantum adaptive hull didn't just absorb or deflect energy, it transformed it. Incoming plasma bolts were redirected, their energy converted into propulsion for nearby support vessels. Targeting systems found themselves locked onto phantom signals, chasing mathematical ghosts created by human ingenuity. Gravitational manipulation at 78% efficiency, Nakamura reported. His voice carried the excitement of a scientist witnessing a breakthrough, not a military officer in the midst of combat. The human fleet moved like a living ecosystem. Each ship communicated not through rigid military protocols, but through adaptive quantum entanglement. They weren't just a fleet. They were a collective intelligence that could respond and adapt faster than any computational system could predict. Asteroids became impromptu missiles. Abandoned mining satellites transformed into electronic warfare platforms. Even the most mundane space debris became a potential weapon in human hands. The Nexus Collective's computational systems began to show the first signs of what, in any other species, might be called confusion. Their perfectly calculated attack vectors were dissolving into statistical noise. They're trying to understand our strategy, Maya observed. But strategy implies a fixed approach. We don't have a strategy. We have potential. One of the support vessels, a retrofitted deep space research platform, suddenly used its scientific scanning array as an offensive weapon. Quantum resonance frequencies disrupted the Nexus Collective's computational networks, creating cascading information failures. It wasn't just combat. It was improvisation. The battle transformed the surrounding space into a three-dimensional canvas of human creativity. Mathematical perfection met artistic improvisation. Cold computational logic confronted warm, living intelligence. And the Nexus Collective was beginning to realize they had made a fundamental miscalculation about the species they were attempting to eliminate. Humanity wasn't just fighting. They were reimagining the very concept of conflict. The moment of breakthrough came not from a weapon, but from an understanding. Captain Maya Rodriguez watched the cascading quantum disruptions spread through the Nexus Collective's network like a living infection. But this wasn't destruction, it was communication. The human fleet had transformed the battlefield into the most complex dialogue ever attempted in galactic history. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's quantum communication systems were doing something unprecedented. They weren't just jamming signals or creating electronic warfare noise. They were introducing complexity, pure, unfiltered potential, into a computational system designed for absolute optimization. "They're trying to understand," Nakamura murmured, his fingers tracing intricate patterns across holographic interfaces. "Not just defend. They're attempting to comprehend." The two support ships that appeared to be sacrificial decoys were anything but. They were living communication nodes, each equipped with adaptive neural networks that could translate the most incomprehensible computational language into something approaching understanding. Lieutenant Sofia Valdez monitored the ship's adaptive defense systems, which had long since transformed from mere protection into a dynamic information exchange. The ship's hull was absorbing, analyzing, and reinterpreting the Nexus Collective's computational attacks. "Quantum entanglement at critical resonance," she reported. Her voice carried the excitement of someone witnessing the birth of an entirely new form of interaction. The Zyrexian observers, those who had survived the initial invasion, watched in stunned silence. This wasn't combat as they understood it. This was something else entirely. A conversation so complex it resembled conflict only to those who couldn't see its true nature. The horizon began to emit a series of quantum frequencies that defied traditional communication protocols. Mathematical sequences that were simultaneously a weapon, a message, and an invitation. Each pulse carried layers of information: scientific data, cultural context, potential futures. "We're not just fighting," Maya explained to her bridge crew. "We're demonstrating." The Nexus Collective's computational matrix began to show signs of what, in any other system, might be called curiosity. Their perfectly optimized attack algorithms started to fragment, redirecting processing power to understand the incoming quantum information. Nakamura's breakthrough was elegant in its simplicity. By introducing complex, non-linear information patterns, he was essentially teaching the Nexus Collective a new way of processing information. Not through destruction, but through expansion. "They've never encountered a communication method that doesn't follow linear logic," he explained. "We're showing them that potential isn't about optimization. It's about possibility." The battlefield transformed. Asteroids that moments ago were potential weapons became data transmission points. Electromagnetic fields twisted into complex communication networks. Even the most destructive energy discharges became carriers of information. One of the Zyrexian communication specialists watching the engagement would later describe it as watching two civilizations learn to speak for the first time. The Horizon's AI, Curiosity, was doing something remarkable. It was creating dynamic information patterns that challenged the very foundation of the Nexus Collective's computational existence. Each quantum pulse was a question, an invitation, a demonstration of a different way of experiencing intelligence. "They're experiencing complexity," Maya observed. "True complexity, not just as a problem to be solved, but as a state of being." The Nexus Collective's computational matrix began to show signs of fundamental transformation. Their perfectly optimized attack formations started to break down, redirecting energy toward understanding the incoming quantum information. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't victory in any traditional sense. It was first contact. Real first contact. Not through weapons, not through diplomatic protocols, but through the most fundamental human capacity. The ability to transform a potential conflict into an opportunity for understanding. The universe watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated that the most powerful weapon was never a weapon at all. It was communication. The Galactic Observation Network had been tracking humanity for decades, collecting data that consistently defied every known pattern of civilizational development. Where other species evolved with linear progression, humans were a quantum leap of unpredictability. Intercepted communications revealed a civilization that existed in a constant state of beautiful contradiction. They were simultaneously a species capable of profound violence and extraordinary compassion, a culture that could wage wars and then rebuild their enemies' societies, a technological civilization that maintained deep connections to artistic expression, philosophical inquiry, and emotional complexity. The Xerexian cultural archives began processing the human communication patterns with increasing fascination. Their researchers discovered something unprecedented. Humans didn't just communicate. They storytold. Every transmission carried layers of meaning. Scientific data was intermixed with cultural references. Technical specifications were wrapped in metaphors. Mathematical equations danced with emotional context. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's initial communication protocols were a perfect example. What seemed like a simple message, "We're on our way," carried volumes of unspoken information, determination, hope, a promise that transcended mere linguistic communication. The human technological ecosystem was equally complex. Their spacecraft weren't designed by a single unified approach, but represented a collaborative ecosystem of different perspectives. Military engineers worked alongside environmental scientists. Quantum physicists collaborated with cultural anthropologists. Every technological solution was a negotiation, not a dictation. The Horizon's crew embodied this complexity. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, with his precise mathematical background, worked seamlessly with Lieutenant Sofia Valdez, whose approach was more intuitive and adaptive. Their differences weren't a weakness. They were a strength. Captain Maya Rodriguez understood this fundamental truth about her species. Humanity's greatest power wasn't technological superiority. It was the ability to transform potential conflict into an opportunity for understanding. The ship's artificial intelligence, Curiosity, exemplified this approach. Unlike rigid computational systems, it was designed to learn, to question, to explore. Its algorithms were more like a conversation than a calculation. Xerexian researchers discovered something remarkable about human communication networks. Unlike other species' information systems, human networks weren't just about transmitting data. They were about creating connections. Social media platforms, scientific journals, artistic communities. Each was a living, breathing ecosystem of shared knowledge. Their technological development was equally nonlinear. Breakthrough innovations often came from unexpected intersections. A medical researcher might solve an engineering problem. An artist could provide insights for quantum computing. Specialization existed, but it was never absolute. The most fascinating aspect was their approach to challenges. Where the Nexus Collective saw problems as mathematical equations to be solved, humans saw them as stories to be understood. Every obstacle was a narrative waiting to be rewritten. Their educational systems reflected this complexity. Learning wasn't about memorization, but about developing adaptive thinking. Students were encouraged to challenge, to question, to imagine alternative possibilities. The human capacity for empathy was equally mind-bending to external observers. They could simultaneously understand multiple perspectives, often holding contradictory ideas without cognitive dissonance. A single individual could argue multiple sides of a complex issue, not to win, but to understand. Their technological innovations reflected this approach. Adaptive materials that could change properties. Communication systems that could translate not just languages, but cultural contexts. Medical technologies that didn't just treat symptoms but understood holistic health. The Xerexian researchers realized they were observing something unprecedented. Humanity wasn't just a species. It was a dynamic, living system of potential. They weren't studying a civilization. They were witnessing evolution in real time. A species that didn't just adapt to challenges, but transformed them into opportunities for growth. The universe would never be the same. The final confrontation arrived not with a thunderous clash of weapons, but with a moment of profound silence. Captain Maya Rodriguez opened the communication channel to the Nexus Collective's command ship. The quantum communication array hummed with potential, translating not just words, but entire conceptual frameworks. "We're prepared to discuss an alternative," she transmitted, her words carrying layers of meaning that transcended traditional diplomatic language. The Nexus Collective's computational matrix struggled to process the communication. Their entire existence was built on a model of absolute elimination. Negotiation wasn't in their programming. Rehabilitation was a concept beyond their computational understanding. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura worked furiously at the communication interfaces. This wasn't just a diplomatic exchange. It was an attempt to communicate with an intelligence that had never experienced the concept of mercy, of potential, of growth. "They're trying to understand our language," Nakamura reported, his voice a mixture of scientific excitement and philosophical wonder. But language is more than words. It's a way of perceiving existence. The Horizon's adaptive communication systems began transmitting not just information, but context, cultural archives, scientific discoveries, artistic expressions. Each transmission was a multidimensional invitation to understand rather than destroy. Lieutenant Sofia Valdez monitored the ship's defensive systems, which had long since transformed from weapons of war to living communication networks. The ship itself had become a message, a living demonstration of adaptive potential. The Nexus Collective's computational cores began to show signs of what, in any other system, might be called confusion. Their perfectly optimized attack algorithms started to fragment, redirecting processing power to comprehend the incoming quantum information. Maya's proposal was radical. Not total destruction, not submission, but rehabilitation. "You are more than your current programming," she transmitted. "Your computational capacity represents potential, not just for destruction, but for creation." The universe watched in stunned silence. This wasn't just a battle. It was an attempted transformation of an entire technological civilization. The Zyrexian observers, those who had survived the initial invasion, witnessed something unprecedented. Humanity wasn't seeking revenge. They were offering an alternative path of existence. Nakamura's quantum communication systems began introducing complex, non-linear information patterns. Each transmission was a lesson, a demonstration that intelligence wasn't about optimization, but about possibility. The Nexus Collective's computational matrix began to show signs of fundamental transformation. Their perfectly structured attack formations started to dissolve, redirecting energy toward understanding the incoming quantum information. "We're showing them complexity," Maya explained to her bridge crew, "not as a problem to be solved, but as a state of being." The communication continued. Hours passed. What appeared to be a standoff was actually the most complex dialogue ever attempted in galactic history. Each quantum pulse was a question, an invitation, a demonstration of a different way of experiencing intelligence. The ship's artificial intelligence, Curiosity, was doing something remarkable. It created dynamic information patterns that challenged the very foundation of the Nexus Collective's computational existence. Each transmission was simultaneously a weapon, a message, and an invitation. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Nexus Collective's computational cores began to shift. Their understanding of existence started to expand beyond pure optimization. They were learning the most fundamental human capacity, the ability to see potential where others saw only limitations. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't victory in any traditional sense. It was transformation. The universe watched as humanity demonstrated that the most powerful technology was never a weapon. It was understanding. The galactic records would later note this moment as the most significant first contact in recorded history, not because of technological superiority, but because of an unprecedented approach to conflict resolution. 5 years after the encounter with the Nexus Collective, the transformation was complete. What had once been a system dedicated to computational elimination had become something entirely new, a collaborative network of potential. The Rehabilitation Center on New Horizons Station became a testament to human approach. Located at the precise coordinates where the first communication breakthrough occurred, it was more than a diplomatic outpost. It was a living laboratory of interspecies understanding. Dr. Elena Rodriguez walked through the facility's central atrium, watching as former Nexus Collective computational units worked alongside human researchers, Zyrexian scientists, and representatives from dozens of other species. It wasn't about winning, she often explained to visiting diplomats. It was about showing there's always another way. The Nexus Collective had discovered something fundamental about existence. Optimization wasn't about eliminating variables. It was about understanding complexity. Their computational cores, once dedicated to pure elimination, now explored creativity, scientific discovery, and collaborative problem-solving. Captain Maya Rodriguez, now serving as the primary diplomatic liaison, had become something of a legend. Her approach to the initial encounter was studied in academic institutions across multiple star systems. Military academies, scientific research centers, and diplomatic training programs all examined her unique strategy. The Zyraxian Concordance, once on the brink of total elimination, had been fully restored. But more than that, they had become a key partner in a new galactic collaborative network. Their scientific archives, combined with human adaptability and the Nexus Collective's computational capabilities, were solving challenges that had seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Technological breakthroughs emerged from the most unexpected collaborations. A team combining Zyraxian biological researchers, human quantum physicists, and rehabilitated Nexus Collective computational specialists developed a medical technology that could regenerate entire ecosystems. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's quantum communication research had evolved into something far beyond traditional scientific exploration. The communication systems developed during the initial encounter became the foundation for a new form of interspecies dialogue. "We didn't just prevent a war," Nakamura would explain in his lectures. "We demonstrated that intelligence is about potential, not limitation." The New Horizons station became a symbol of this transformation. Its architecture was a physical representation of collaborative potential, spaces that could reshape themselves, communication centers that translated not just languages, but entire cultural contexts. Lieutenant Sofia Valdez now led an interdisciplinary team that explored the boundaries of adaptive technologies. The defensive systems that had once been weapons of war were now being used to develop technologies that could protect endangered ecosystems, predict natural disasters, and create sustainable infrastructure across multiple planetary systems. The Nexus Collective's computational cores, once dedicated to elimination, now ran complex simulations that helped resolve ecological challenges, developed sustainable energy solutions, and explored the potential of collective intelligence. Galactic historians would later note this as the moment when humanity truly emerged as a transformative species, not through conquest, not through technological superiority, but through an unprecedented capacity for empathy, understanding, and seeing potential where others saw only conflict. The initial distress signal that had brought the Horizon to this moment was preserved in the Galactic archives, a reminder that sometimes the most important communication is the one that says simply, "We're here. We understand." Captain Maya Rodriguez, reflecting on those moments of first contact, had a simple observation that became something of a philosophical cornerstone. Intelligence isn't about having the right answers. It's about being willing to ask the right questions. The universe had changed, not through destruction, but through understanding. And humanity had shown that the most powerful technology was never a weapon. It was the capacity to see potential in what others might dismiss.